Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to tackle something that I know can be a real headache for a lot of you, a proper genetics exam question. We are going to break it down together, piece by piece, so you'll know exactly how to handle these in your next exam. You ready? Let's get into it.
Look, I totally get it. You see a massive question about Gregor Mendel, it's got tables, it's got multiple parts, and your brain just kind of goes into panic mode, right? Well, it really doesn't have to be that way. Think of this explainer as our strategy session. We're going to turn all that confusion into pure confidence. Okay, so here it is. Question 1.4 in all its glory. We've got a little intro about Mendel, this big table packed with different plant characteristics, and a whole list of questions. I know, it definitely looks like a lot, but trust me on this, every single answer that we need is hiding in plain sight, right here on this page. We just have to know where to look.
So how do you even start with a beast like this? Well, we start right at the beginning. You know, the easiest marks in pretty much any genetics question are going to be the definitions. So let's knock those out first and get some points on the board.
First up, question 1.4.1. It asks for the term that Mendel used for inherited factors, and the answer is allele. You know, what's so cool about this is that Mendel himself, he didn't know about genes or DNA. He just saw these factors being passed down. Nowadays, we know that these different versions of a gene, like the one for violet flowers and the one for yellow flowers, are called alleles.
All right, next. 1.4.1b asks for the term for a cross that involves only one characteristic. That is a monohybrid cross. Just think mono, meaning one. And if you look back at that big table in the question, each row, it's basically its own separate monohybrid cross. Round seeds versus oval seeds, that's one. Smooth pods versus wrinkled pods, that's another. It's as simple as that.
Okay, definitions are done. Easy marks. Now it's time for a little bit of detective work. The next questions are asking us to figure out which traits are dominant and which are recessive. And the best part is, the question itself gives us every single clue we need. It's all about comparing the parent generation, that's the P1, to the first batch of offspring, the F1 generation.
So let's zoom in on just one row, flower color. As you can see in the table, in that P1 parent generation, Mendel crossed a violet-flowered plant with a yellow-flowered plant. Now you got to pay close attention to what happens next, in that F1 generation. Look at that. Every single one of the offspring, the entire F1 generation, had violet flowers. The yellow characteristic, it just vanished. Now in genetics, when you cross two different purebred parents, and only one of those traits actually shows up in the kids, that trait is the dominant one. It literally masks the other trait.
So let's think about that. Here's the key question. If violet and yellow are crossed, and all the offspring turn out violet, which of those two traits has to be the dominant one?
Exactly. The dominant characteristic for flower color is violet. And just like that, you've solved question 1.4.3a just by reading the table. See? I told you, you've got this. Okay, now let's use that exact same logic for the next one, pod texture. The table shows us a cross between a plant with smooth pods and one with wrinkled pods. And what happens in the F1 generation? Yep, they're all smooth. So if we use the same rule as before, smooth has to be the dominant trait. Now question 1.4.3b asks for the recessive characteristic. So if smooth is the dominant one, what does that make the wrinkled trait? It's the one that got hidden, the one that disappeared. And you've got it. The recessive characteristic for pod texture is wrinkled. We figured that out just by letting the data in the table tell us its story. That's 2 more marks in the bag. We're on a roll. You know, what we've just been doing, looking at the F1 generation, it's not just some random pattern. It's actually the whole foundation for one of Gregor Mendel's most important scientific laws. And that leads us perfectly into our next question. So question 1.4.4 asks us to name the specific law of inheritance that's being shown here, where one trait completely covers up another. All those results saying all violet and all smooth, that's a textbook illustration of this fundamental principle. And that observation is a perfect example of the law of dominance. This law basically says that when an organism has 2 different alleles for a trait, which we call being heterozygous, one of those alleles is going to hide the presence of the other one. So in our examples, violet conceals yellow and smooth conceals wrinkled. That is the law of dominance, right here in action. All right, team, we've cleared the first few levels. Now it's time for the boss level, the dihybrid cross. This is for question 1.4.5.
Now, it looks a bit scary, but I'm telling you, it all comes down to one key piece of information that you just need to know.
So the question sets up a cross using plants from that F1 generation. And remember, they're heterozygous, which means they have one of each allele. So even though they look like they have round seeds and violet flowers, those are the dominant traits, they're also secretly carrying the recessive alleles. The question is asking, what happens when you cross two of these plants? So specifically, it's asking for the phenotypic ratio, and phenotype is just a fancy word for the physical traits you can actually see. So we're looking for the ratio of how the offspring look. Now, for any dihybrid cross where both parents are heterozygous for both traits, there is this famous, almost magical ratio that you simply have to memorize. And there it is, 9:3:3:1. This is probably one of the most important ratios in all of genetics. It means for every 16 offspring, you can expect 9 to have both dominant traits, 3 with one dominant and one recessive, 3 with the other combo, and just 1 with both recessive traits. Please commit this ratio to memory. It's guaranteed marks on exam day. Okay, the final part, 1.4.5b, asks for the genotype of an offspring that is heterozygous for two characteristics. Heterozygous just means having two different alleles. So for seed shape, that's big R, little r. For flower color, it's big P, little p. You just put them together, and the genotype is RRPP. Simple as that. And just like that, we have cracked question 1.4. We took that intimidating block of text, and we turned it into a series of simple logical steps. So what's our game plan for the next time one of these genetics questions pops up on your exam? Here it is. This is your strategy. First, always start with the definitions to bank those easy marks. Second, remember the data table is your best friend. It's holding all the clues. Third, use that F1 generation to quickly spot which trait is dominant. And finally, for those tricky dihybrid crosses, you have to memorize the 9:3:3:1 ratio. This is a solid strategy that's going to work every single time. I really hope that walking through that question with me has helped build up your confidence. Look, if this helped you out, be a good friend and share it with someone who might be struggling. And for a ton more exam tips and tricks, you have got to be following Mr. Chi on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. Seriously, he's always posting amazing stuff to help you kill it in your exams. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck with all your studying.